sort of material issues, but with the human issues, the spiritual issues, the emotional issues, the mental issues that each of us has. And I'm really grateful for the individuals, about 70 individuals, who volunteered to help us start an overnight warming shelter. You'll hear from some of those next week, but whether you're a part of that shelter or not, I promise that because you are here, because you are a part of St. Paul's, you are connected with our neighbors, those who live among us, those who live around us, those who sometimes benefit from our resources, food or shelter, but mostly those from whom we benefit because they help us understand what it means to be a part of a community that is always a little bit bigger, always stretching a little bit bigger. So today and next week are about that. So thank you for doing this. It's important work. It's good work. And I'm going to ask Dave McMath, who is one of the coordinators of our overnight shelter, to introduce our speaker. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Hi, I'm Dave. So Solomon Burchfield is the director of New Beginnings, which is a community that helps people get out of chronic homelessness, and he was formerly at Seven Hills. He's going to talk in a minute, and I told him he had 50 minutes, but I'm going to take a few of those to talk about a little bit about the thing that Evan just said. So this winter, for those who aren't aware, St. Paul's opened its doors to people when the temperature was below 30 degrees, and we let people spend the night in here. We were open for 37 nights, and we had 50 volunteers serve at least one shift to help. And if you want to hear more about that, come back next week. Opening the church was very hard. It put a lot of strains on the parish in a number of dimensions. And one comment that I heard kind of a lot was that people don't feel comfortable interacting with our neighbors. Solomon has a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom to share about that, about the kind of things our neighbors have been through. So I asked him to come and help start that conversation. Something about our neighbors that I've learned, knew but learned, they do not need our charity. The people that I met this winter are some of the hardest working people you know. They spend so much time looking for resources and trying to get by. But they do deserve to have their dignity respected, and that's something we tried very hard to work on, and I hope you'll come back next week to learn more about the ways that we tried to implement that program. But for now, thank you, Solomon.
I appreciate that, David. And thank you for being here today. I didn't quite expect a beautiful large group, so it's great to hang out with all of you this morning. Happy Mother's Day. I took last week off, and so I'm kind of in this chill, relaxed mood. I want to just dialogue with you today. I know we've got like YouTube going as well, but I'm really a casual person, so I would love it if you shoot your hand up and jump in and make a statement, ask a question, share some gossip, whatever's on your mind to help this dialogue keep going. We did a little conversation a couple months ago in the middle of the winter as y'all were preparing and serving people who don't have homes in our community. And so I'm going to do a quick refresher of some of that and then just keep this dialogue going. So can I start by asking, would you raise your hand if you volunteered in the shelter over this winter on any night, even one time, or help bring food or anything? Okay, cool. So a good number, but not the majority of us. And then also, would you raise your hand if you attended the last time that I got to come and dialogue with St. Paul's here? Okay. So just a smattering. So I'll try to slow down on some of the parts that are refreshers. I have a couple slides to help us stay organized. And it starts with this. This is my controlling metaphor for our 40 minutes together, is your glasses. How are you seeing the world? How are you seeing the people in front of you? Because I think interacting with our neighbors who don't have homes, many who haven't had homes for years and years, all will come back to how we see them. And so we're going to talk about something called trauma-informed care a little bit. And I'm going to begin with this metaphor, and I'm going to pick somebody to pick on. And Gwen, you said it was okay for me to pick on you. Can I ask you to come up here for a second? If you don't want to, I'll pick on Mac. You're fine. Come on up, Gwen, please. Give her a round of applause to encourage her. She's trying to be shy. Oh my gosh. And it's Gwen, so you know she's wearing metaphors on her shirt. I'm going to ask you to put on 2 pair of glasses. This is the first pair. They're clean. I got them from my garage this morning.
They're not very attractive.
Sorry. All right, we'll put those on over your eyes. Looking out. Tell me what you see. Tell me who's here.
Well, I know my husband's here because I know he's here.
You know he's here.
If I look straight ahead, it's just foggy. And if I look to, I see a couple people. Oh, hello. I can see a couple people on the periphery, but if I look straight ahead, I can't see anything. And even the people that I see, if I didn't already know them, I probably wouldn't be able to recognize them.
Okay. I'm looking here at Carol Grisham. Can you tell me if she's happy with you right now or angry at you right now?
I can't tell. Well, she's smiling, so I'm going to say happy.
All right. That's simple. All right, Gwen, you can take off the swimming goggles.
Wait, just take off both of them?
Pull them right off, yep.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to put on these now.
Oh, okay.
These are my blue light detection glasses I'm supposed to use when I look at the computer. Okay. Now tell me what you see again.
I see everybody who's in this room, and I can see your faces very clearly.
Is Carol Grisham angry or happy with you right now?
She seems happy.
She's being coy, I think. Okay. That's it. That's the metaphor. I can have those glasses back.
No.
Thank you. Give Gwen a round of applause. The point of my metaphor is that how we see will determine how we treat people, what we can see. And so if we're going to spend time with our neighbors who don't have homes, who have lost their home, often lost their job, often lost their family and their friends, often lost their health, often have lost some of the hope they have for the future. If we bring our default pair of glasses and look at them through that, we won't see them clearly. We won't see the experiences they've gone through that have shaped them. We won't see the circumstances clearly that they're living in. And we'll just assume a lot of unhelpful things about them. And so I want to encourage us today, as we talk, to think about trauma-informed care as a pair of glasses that we put on and look through as we spend time with our neighbors who don't have housing. All right, so for those of you that weren't here last time I visited, we talked a little bit about homelessness and adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, if you've heard these studies, that talk about when we're really young and impressionable, the experiences we go through impacts our brain. And it has lifelong effects around our thinking, our learning, our memory. The trauma experiences from childhood and in adulthood, it can reshape our brain for an effect how well we regulate our emotions, if I fly off the handle or if I'm really calm, how well we control our impulses. All of those things are impacted by trauma. And so adverse childhood experiences is how we measure how many, this is a common scoring test, to say how many adverse childhood experiences did I have in my developmental years. And so you track it from 0 adverse childhood experiences, and if you'll notice on the very left, among those in America with 0 adverse childhood experiences, there is a 1.3% chance that you'll experience homelessness in adulthood. 1% chance. And then if you go all the way to the far end, usually ACE tests have a score of 10, so we're looking at 8 or above. If you have 8 or more adverse childhood experiences as part of your story, there is a 33% chance at some point in adulthood you'll experience homelessness. And you'll see on the graph, it's kind of a one-to-one correlation almost. As adverse childhood experiences accumulate, the likelihood that you'll experience adult homelessness goes up in proportion. So this is critical to recognize. If I'm going to spend time with our neighbors who don't have homes, I need to understand a little bit about the trauma background of the people I'll be spending time with. Homelessness is also a kind of trauma. It's not just about what's happening when I'm 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 years old. If I'm an adult and I am sleeping in places that are dangerous and don't know where my next meal is coming from, I don't have a sense of security in my person or my home. It is also a kind of trauma, and it activates different parts of our brain. So the fear parts of our brain, the amygdala, is really activated. I'm seeing the world as full of threats and opportunities. That's what that part of our brain, when it's active, is doing. The world's full of threats and dangers, and it's full of opportunities that I need to seize. And my brain is kind of coaching my body to see the world that way. So homelessness is a kind of trauma, and it affects how our brain is regulating our bodies. So as y'all are opening this shelter, as you have opened this shelter, and looking to continue to grow in the ability to do that, we need to expect the people we'll interact with have been through traumas. And the way they behave and think and interact are going to be shaped by that. And so these are some of the common impacts in behavior that are associated with having gone through traumatic experiences. Hypervigilance, that's that person that's kind of always looking for that window's open, who could get in there? This person's not trustworthy. I'm dialed in on the world's full of dangers and threats. Foggy memory, unclear thinking, emotion dysregulation. I'm sure that you saw this over the winter. If some small point of friction caused somebody to go from 1 to 11, that's what this is talking about. My ability inside to regulate my own emotions is more limited. And I'm often depending on someone else to help co-regulate my emotions. I need a really calm, grounded volunteer to help me calm back down if I get worked up. Lower impulse control and higher sensitivity. These are really common behavioral symptoms of people that have gone through a lot of trauma. And then we talked, last time we met, we looked at some of this in more depth. Therefore, if we're going to serve folks that have been through a lot of trauma, we want to create an environment and a program that expects certain behaviors and has a plan to respond to how people who've been through a lot of trauma need us to help create a sense of safety. So these are called the principles of trauma-informed care. There's 6 of them often. I put 5 and integrated in the diversity element to all 5, so it can be part of all 5 of these principles. The first is safety. So in your winter overnight shelter, we want to find ways to maximize physical and psychological safety. It's the most important principle if I'm going to be supporting people with a trauma background. Promoting trustworthiness, I do what I say. Our communication's clear about rules. We're not capricious. It's not about which volunteer do you interact with. We have consistency, so I try to earn trust. We promote choice and collaboration wherever I can in the program. Do you want to sleep here or do you want to sleep there? Would you rather talk to me or would you rather talk to a female volunteer that's here tonight? Choice. Collaboration, I'm looking for ways that the guest in the shelter can contribute to what's going on tonight. Like, I wanted to pull you aside and ask you, will you help me make sure that this space is safe tonight? If you see one of your friends that gets worked up, like, shoot me a hand signal, and I'll come over and try to help de-escalate early. These are the kind of things we collaborate with our guests on. And then empowerment is a final principle of trauma-informed care, that we want to see people's abilities and gifts and empower those things. That's what they'll use as they rebuild their lives. The 6th principle on respecting culture and background and gender and orientation and race, that's that diversity piece. And I would rather us integrate that into each one of these 5 instead of seeing it as a separate kind of 6th chair at the table. It's part of thinking about safety from the perspective of someone in a racial minority in our community, from the perspective of someone from a sexual minority perspective in our culture. So each of these aspects, we try to promote diversity and inclusion and accessibility. Yeah.
I mean, it might be understood that we know what you're talking about by the traumas that were experienced that contribute to this, but I'm wondering if at some point you could flesh that out a little bit.
Absolutely. And thank you. I invited you to interrupt and raise your hand and shoot a comment, so you're going first. I love it. So what counts as trauma? We usually are thinking of the most extreme examples, and that would mean physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse can have the same impact. It can also be neglect, not having food, not having basic needs met. In these ACE scoring, you also get a point, that is a score, if you witness abuse in your home, if you witness drug use as a 4-year-old in your home. So either experiencing violence or neglect or witnessing that violence or neglect, those are the things that end up reshaping our brain, especially if we don't have a safe person to go to with those challenges, because many of us probably in this room have experienced some of those things. And one of the part of the research on trauma is that if you have a safe person to go to share about what's going on and get comfort from, that it has a different impact on your development. If you didn't have a safe person to go to and feel comfort and safety from, it does more impact your brain. So those are the kind of experiences I mean by trauma. Thanks for the question. Okay, so how do we see? I'm trying to get us to show up on a Saturday night when it's freezing cold and our neighbors are coming in, and we're trying to put on these glasses and see through trauma-informed care. It's not enough to keep it in our head. So I like to say trauma-informed care is not a philosophy, it's an intervention. And by that I mean, it's not like I read the book and I can tell you how the amygdala works and how the prefrontal cortex works. That's not the point. The point is I can intervene. When someone is getting emotionally worked up, I see that this is not a character flaw. I see that this isn't a symptom. It's not about what's wrong with you. It's about what happened to you. And that's one of those pivots in trauma-informed care. So how do we see? 3 things. I want to organize what we'll talk through. One is first, before we're even talking about like trauma and whatnot, see the whole person, a person that has strengths and abilities and a whole story. So often in my work, as I've worked with people without homes, I have to remind myself, I don't really know this full person. They are more complex. They're more interesting. They have had lives long before they ever met me. As a 60-year-old person in the woods, I often am meeting them on their worst day. If it's freezing cold out and you're welcoming them here, you're meeting someone on their worst day. Or you're meeting them in their worst season of life. But that doesn't mean that's their whole person. They used to raise kids. They used to teach in school. They sat by their husband's bed while he was dying. Like, human beings have layers. And so I try to not like collapse someone down into just this person and the fact that they don't have a home. Like, homelessness is a kind of circumstance, not a kind of person. And so I want to remember, I don't know. There's a whole lot I don't know. So I like to always remind myself, begin that way. Number 2, I want to expect to see the effects of trauma in the people I'm interacting with. And that's what's going to help me bring patience and creativity into the interaction instead of judgment. Because if someone's losing their cool, you got it. If someone's losing their cool, like, it's easy for me to just ascribe that to a character trait. But I'm going to expect to see symptoms of trauma. When I go into work every day, I have a kind of ritual in the car where I kind of put on this uniform of like, I expect to interact with people that don't feel grateful for what I'm doing today. I don't expect every person to be reasonable and rational with me. I don't expect that. It's about expectations, because if I go with the wrong expectations, I think my dad used to always say, happiness is the difference between expectations and reality. So if there's a mismatch there, like that's how much unhappiness you'll have. But if you come in with expectations that match reality, then you don't have any unhappiness. There's no space for that. So we expect to see the effects of trauma instead of being tempted to see it as character flaws. We expect to see mindset and behaviors that are adapted to life on the street, living to survive. Living on the street changes your mindset. It makes things that many of us might call abnormal, it makes them normal. And the more we understand that, the more we can have grace for why someone might bring that perspective into our interaction. Okay, so I'm going to get specific, because last time we talked, we were really abstract. So I'm going to give 3 examples that I've been through in my experience, and then I'm going to ask for your help on some new examples I'll put up on the screen. So here's a sample behavior. A person that I used to know, she was homeless for, when I knew her, probably 6 or 8 years. She had an alcohol problem. She drank every day. And this is back when I worked at Seven Hills, and we would often try to help her get into a treatment program. And she actually went several times. And then when she came back, and the day she'd come back, her face would be different, her body would be different, she'd feel, full of hope. And then literally 2-3 days later, she'd show right back up, drunk, belligerent, not acting out of character. We couldn't help sometimes, but just say, like, she don't want to change. We've been on this merry-go-round multiple times. We were tempted. Just say, like, she won't follow through. Like, had the appointment, had the follow-up appointments. She didn't show up. We're going to pay for the taxi. We're going to give her a ride. There's no follow-through here. And we couldn't help but have some of those judgments. And what we had to do was change the pair of glasses that we were using. What she told me, she didn't tell me, we had some students I'd invited to come and do a book club at Seven Hills. So after we'd closed for the day, there was a creative writing class that came in and helped people make poetry. And I didn't read until after she passed away. I didn't ever get to read her poem. She talked about at night in the tent how scared she was because it was dangerous, because it was unpredictable, because there was a layer of nylon in between her and people that are dangerous. And what she put in her poem was, I am not able to fall asleep unless I drink myself to sleep. I think that changes my perspective. It's not about she doesn't want to change, she lacks follow through. Like, there's some basic conditions in her life that made my expectation out of sync until she had some of those basic needs for safety and security, shelter and food. It's really hard to imagine someone putting in the difficult work to make big changes around addictive patterns in their life. So this is one example. I'm tempted to just see that she don't want to change. And after listening at a deeper level, knowing her whole story, it helped me see why. I might need to focus in a different place in her life if I want to help see her develop a healthier relationship to addictive patterns. All right, second story. This was a gentleman just a couple years ago, or I think last year, maybe 2 years ago. I'd hear him tell stories about what led to his homelessness. And when I'd hear him tell his story, it was often different. It'd be, they kicked me out of this assisted living place in Tennessee, and I came here to live with my sister, and then that happened. And the next time I'd hear him talking, he was like, I had an apartment in Springdale, and I would drive a truck, and then they laid me off that job, and I no longer could afford the apartment, and so I slept in my car, and then later ended up camping. I heard like these different stories. And sometimes we're tempted as we start hearing people tell their stories, like, oh, this person's just like lying. They're like being manipulative. They're always hiding something. You get like a different version each time that you interact with them. Well, if I look through the trauma-informed care glasses, two things will pop up. One is that trauma does affect memory, sequencing, concentration, recall, and communication under stress. Sometimes it could just be that his brain is mixed up about the sequence of things. He's not trying to lie. He's not trying to mislead. He's under pressure in this interaction, and he's trying to pull pieces of his story that helps, connect for the person in front of him. Another true thing, like it or not, is that sometimes people learn the story they tell you determines if they'll get access to food or shelter or safety. A guy at the park in a van's got sleeping bags, and he's handing out sleeping bags, and you're like 15th in line. Like, I've heard people go up, I've got a van down here, my pregnant wife is there, like, we really need one of these sleeping bags. And I go like, maybe. That's possible. And it's possible that this is what a person has learned that's in survivor brain. They're just focused on how do I get what I need to survive today? And the person in front of me, I need them to have a certain impression of me, so I get that sleeping bag. Personally, I think that's a little different than lying. I know it's not true. I'm not blessing it as appropriate way for us to communicate and all, but I'm saying I get it a little bit. You see people holding a sign like veteran. I have people ask me all the time, are they really a veteran? I always say, I know that they're really hurting. And it may be that they're a veteran, and it may be that they're not a veteran. But sometimes you would learn, we would also learn the skills that I need to survive on the street and get access to the basic things I need. It might bring out different parts of my personality, morality. Okay, third story. This was a transgender woman that I knew who camped at our Safe Camp project. And she is now in recovery and is living out of state and doing really well. But what she told me, she was famous on the street for being hot-tempered and aggressive. And even if you weren't mean to her, she just came on strong to you. And she had that reputation. And we would end up seeing her through that pair of glasses. It's oh, this is a person you gotta be careful around. And there's this character problem here, right? When we got to know her better, she talked about how when she'd camp, people would come through with machetes. This was her telling the story. And would bully you. If you got out of the hospital and came back to camp and they thought you had medicine they could sell on the street, they'd come and have weapons and bully you out of your medication. Bully you out of your money. The first of the month when people with disability get paid, it's a dangerous time. You have a target on your back if you live on disability benefits and are homeless. So she talked about how she'd been bullied out of medicine and money and made to move to a different camp, and here's what she learned. She would be mean first. As someone came up, she would say, move along, MFer. Move along. She would project this aggressiveness of don't mess with me. Don't think that you can mess with me. We would learn that too. These are skills. The skills you need to survive and thrive on the street are different skills than what you need to survive and thrive in a neighborhood. And so the trauma background and the circumstances of being homeless are part of a layer in the behavior that we can expect as we support our neighbors who don't have housing and shelter. Okay, so I want to do a little practice. I've got 2 or 3 of these so we can go faster or slower. Sample behavior, a guest here at St. Paul's avoids eye contact, mumbles indifferently when you're trying to get to know them or check them in. Old pair of glasses, default mode, I might just be that's rude. This person is rude. What's a better way? Can someone just kind of shout out a better way to see this behavior through a trauma-informed care pair of glasses?
They view relationships as transactional.
Okay.
They view this relationship as transactional, and they're already somewhere safe and they already have food and they have their basic needs met for the night, they're like, I don't have anything else to give anybody else today.
I like it. Okay. Could be. Yep.
So, yeah, can you say back what it means?
They might view direct eye contact as threatening or aggressive. And to your point, if every single meal and place I stay involves kind of this interaction with somebody, I might develop this kind of transactional mindset of, I've already got it now. I've got the place to sit. I know where the food's at. Like, I don't need every time I try to go to bed someone building a relationship with me. You and I don't. Like, we just go to bed. So, yeah, there's something there. Sample behavior. A guest here at St. Paul's ignores the rules and overreacts when you try to correct them about, hey, that's something we don't allow here. We're tempted to just think, man, they think the rules don't apply to them. And I guess they don't care about staying here tonight. I guess they'd rather be on the street if they don't be in an environment that has some rules. That's one default mode. What's another?
Personally, I've been through this myself. I've been aggressive to, what was I saying again? Sometimes when someone's been through trauma and stuff, they get afraid that if they do the rules, others might think that they can make them do anything, and they are afraid of that.
Okay. If I comply with your rule, kind of sets a precedent that you can just boss me around. Yeah. Do people without homes feel bossed around a lot? Yeah.
Can I piggyback with a question? It's understanding that there's trauma and that their behavior is more related to their trauma and how they have to survive in their community. How can we interact with them, remain safe, and respect our own traumas?
Sure.
I think that's where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I have my traumas too, related to I was formerly a nurse, related to unhoused patients that I've cared for. So how can I respect my traumas, respect them as human beings, because I completely empathize and support this process, but also remain safe?
I want to validate that concern because it's very true. We kind of trigger each other sometimes. And if we're trying to create a space that welcomes people who have traumatic backgrounds, but at the risk of me getting triggered, re-traumatized. I think part of the answer to that is knowing what your role is and having insight into yourself of, is my role to be frontline, interacting interpersonally with people that have such significant traumas in their background? Or maybe is there a different role that doesn't risk me getting triggered that also helps with the project? That's my perspective. Any other ways to kind of fix this default pair of glasses on this one? Yeah.
I found that instead of saying, well, I need you to follow this rule, that it's instead making it non-personal. This is our rule at this establishment. That way there's not an authority figure. It's not reinforcing a hierarchy. It's just we're all bound by these particular rules.
Yep. That's very true, and maybe in tandem with what the previous person was asking. Just because we're working with folks that have traumatic backgrounds doesn't mean that no rules apply. It doesn't mean like it's a free-for-all. It doesn't mean there's no safety worries here. It doesn't mean everything's, you have permission to act however you want. That's not true. It just means that we have a sensitivity to what are our rules, what are our non-negotiables. And we'll talk just a little bit about that in the de-escalation part. Okay, maybe the guest is also thinking like, I've been to a lot of places that have a bunch of rules, and it's taught me that I don't trust them, because it depends which person's here enforcing it. It depends how bad of a day they've been having, which rules they choose to enforce. So sometimes there's experiences behind them that make them say like, the rules are not, I don't see the rules the same way you're seeing the rules. All right, a guest here at St. Paul's is hoarding food or supplies. You catch them stealing toilet paper and forks and getting seconds and thirds before everyone's gotten first. Default glasses, man, this person's selfish and being manipulative, not considerate of others. It's easy to think. How do we clean that up?
Maybe they think that they're unsafe, and like if they don't hoard food, that they won't have any left over to have.
Okay. If I don't hoard, I won't have any left over to have. Richard?
I was going to be a little more clinical. It's just it's a reaction to extreme neglect. They saw this in kids who had been released from the death camps after World War II. Children would hoard food, and they would try to reassure them, you're getting fed 3 times a day, okay, sure. They'd look under the bed, and there was all this food they had put under there.
Yeah. Mm.
This isn't exactly what you asked, Solomon, but I think it's important and worth noting that in another setting with other individuals, that behavior is rewarded. And so in the corporate world, we call that being resourceful, right? Or planning ahead. And so it's interesting because that's that same type of thing of, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and plan. But in this lens, it's manipulative, it's lying, it's hoarding. In a lot of places, I think we get rewarded for that. It's skillful, resourceful, savvy. So I think that's interesting to think about.
Very interesting. The context determines how we characterize that behavior. Honestly, I think the same thing is true with addiction. I think our country's full of addictions to work, and we reward the hell out of it. Our society's full of hoarding wealth, and we don't say boo. To your point here at this table, I think scarcity changes your mindset and behavior. If you don't have enough. When we first opened New Beginnings, we had a closet where we put toilet paper and toothpaste and deodorant and all these concerns. Oh, you're going to spend all the time just rebuying all this stuff. And you know what? It was true. For a couple months, it was really frustrating. Rebuying all these supplies. Like, we need to lock it up. We need to, they have a key to get to that closet. It took a couple months, but it settled back down. Because scarcity changes your mindset and your behavior. And then knowing that there is enough can rewire things back. I don't have to worry, I'll never get another roll of toilet paper or deodorant. It's always going to be there. And once I learn that again, I go, I don't need to hoard it like squirrels hoarding acorns. It's going to be there.
I live south of Greenland. So every Sunday morning I come in. I used to come at a little before 7. And in the daylight, the people that are camping out are coming off the creek there by Mountain Man. This morning, there was a man, and he looked like he had a little boy, probably about 10 years old. And that kind of upset me because they were coming off the creek and they didn't have a place to stay. Are we doing anything to have shelter during the summertime? We've got 32 degrees. A lot of places open to take in people. But what are we doing? And I'm sure you're probably doing something. But I see this because I live south of town. I come through and I see these people, how they're struggling.
Yeah.
And it upsets me.
Yeah. I hear you. It upsets me too. And you're right. We have a team of organizations helping. There's Salvation Army, there's Seven Hills, there's New Beginnings. The city does provide some funding You know all about. I know. It's awesome.
Make stuff and put in the refrigerator out here.
Yep.
But we just have so many people that are struggling, you know, to a lot of people, it wouldn't be very many, but, you know, when you look at the bus stop, you come, there's 10 or 15 people trying to get on the bus to go somewhere to get a meal, probably, I don't know.
Yeah, and of any night, there's more unsheltered homeless folks than sheltered homeless folks in Fayetteville. More than half are not sleeping in a shelter environment, even though they're homeless. So, no, you're putting your finger on the fact that we have a lot more work to do, and we'll have to change the systems that are behind pushing people into homelessness at the same time that we pull people out and help provide housing and support so they can keep it.
Solomon?
Yeah.
Just got a couple of minutes.
Oh, God. Okay.
Sorry.
We'll go fast now. I guess it's critical of everyone and everything. We might be tempted to say they're ungrateful, have a bad attitude. And I'll leave that one open. You can think about, what does your trauma-informed glasses tell you to think about this person? I'm going to rush through. This happened last time, David.
It happens a lot.
So I'm going to do 2 quick more topics in 5 minutes. The first is, we talked about last time building rapport. One way to be comfortable with our neighbors who don't have homes, especially as we're providing life-saving shelter, is that we don't want to have to deal with a lot of behavior problems. So our brain goes to, how do we de-escalate when someone gets angry, when there's conflict, when there's risk of violence? And we tend to begin with, how do I de-escalate? The truth is, we should begin instead with rapport, because the work is proactive, not reactive. To build rapport, to build connection, is the way that you prevent conflict and violence, etc. So here's some useful phrases that I just thought of as I wrote these down. You know, I'm glad you came in out of the weather. Anything that can help make tonight easier. My job is to help make this place feel safe and respectful for everyone. So let me know if I can help this evening. So phrases, literally memorize phrases to help you build rapport. I do this. I have cheat sheets of things I'm going to say over and over to people to build rapport. It also doesn't matter as much what I say, it's about how I say it. So the body language communicates most of what I'm going to say before you ever hear it come out of my mouth. Is my body language, is my face friendly? Is my posture open? Are my hands visible? Do I move too quickly? Do I move deliberately and slow? These are things to practice to do winter shelter well. We don't want to touch people until we ask permission. We don't want to tower over people if they're sitting or lying down. We don't want to do that security guard posture, like command and control, like, prove to me, you're right. So this is just some phrases and body language stuff about building rapport. On the tone side of building rapport is about practicing. Sometimes I don't feel like I'm ready to be friendly and open, and I need to know I'm coming to work. Like a waitress puts on a uniform for her shift, I need to put this on if I'm going to be a volunteer during the winter shelter. Friendly, calming, light but not flippant. People are dealing with heavy stuff. The principles for building rapport especially are around this pennies in the cup idea. So we did last time an example of like a cup, and each person that comes in to stay here is holding the cup. And every time I show regard, show respect, give a courtesy to someone, I put pennies in their cup. Every time. Anytime I'm disrespectful, dismissive, disregarding, I got to take 4 pennies out of the cup. So there's a ratio. In fact, anytime I enforce a rule, tell someone no, I have to take pennies out of their cup. So there's a balance that I'm looking to maintain, and I need to proactively put pennies in your cup as you come in and as I get to know you, so that when it's time to say, I'm sorry, you can't come back in line for seconds, I have pennies I can take out of that cup. I have to earn that rapport and build that rapport every time I see you. And then the last piece, outside of building rapport, is the de-escalation stuff. And so David and I talked, we can do another session sometime, maybe a half-day long type thing, multiple hours. De-escalation, you can see the picture down here is this escalation cycle. Probably some of you are familiar with that, where there's a baseline, and then there's a trigger that agitates somebody, and they accelerate, and then up at the top is like the peak. That's what we call Volcano Mountain. That's when explosion happens. Violence, threats, whatever. And so the goal is de-escalation is to intervene early and help someone calm back down before they get to the top of escalation mountain. And so there's different phrases I'll use and different strategies to help navigate the escalation cycle. But there's phrases to memorize. Body language, if I'm de-escalating, I want to give full attention. But I also want to have this 45-degree angle. So that squared up shoulder to shoulder biophysically tells you you're threatening me, you're challenging me. So I want to do this, and I want to have open hands. I want to have this kind of pleading demeanor if I'm helping you de-escalate. I hear you. Can we slow down so I can understand better what's going on? Like, that's the body language part. And then tone, if I'm de-escalating, we're focused on using a calming tone. I want to speak in a low pitch, lower, literally, practice it. I'm going to talk lower than I do. And I'm going to talk slower than I usually do. If I'm de-escalating with someone, and it makes them use their attention differently, and they slow down with me, and they lower their pitch with me, and a slower pace, a slower pitch. If I'm delivering bad news, I need to be apologetic. I need to mirror the emotions I would expect in giving this news. So I'm sorry we don't allow pets in this space. And I get why it would be convenient too, but that is one of the rules here at St. Paul's. My face and body should say I'm a little sorry about that. The principles are to be preventative, not interventive. Listening is the closest thing to magic. If you have time, lots of volunteers help, because peel off and just listen to someone for a while. Most of what pushes someone up that escalation mountain is not feeling heard, not feeling listened to, not feeling seen. You don't always have to solve the problem. You just have to give the relationship. And then a person, it helps co-regulate that emotion, and they walk themselves back down the mountain. And then you do want to call for backup. If we dig into this more, like conflict resolution is best with two people at least. So on your own, it's really hard, honestly, to do effective de-escalation. Okay, and that's basically it. I want to remind you to put on these things like clothes. So trauma-informed glasses, this is part of your uniform, not these. Rapport building skills to build relationships and prevent conflict, and some phrases and skills to use when things are going up escalation mountain. That's it. And then David has a survey for today. If you will scan this QR code. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, Mac passed around some paper copies, but not 50 of them. So I'm glad everybody came. But and also, if you're watching online, there's a link to it on the YouTube event to link to this survey. Thank you, Solomon.